pleasure to have you once again on the link this week as we keep our promise to furnish you with information you can use and opportunities. Tonight we're discussing an element of tax, and it has to do with tax enforcement you might have seen. But before I talk about the questions, we have the spokesperson for Uganda Revenue Authority, Mr. Ibrahim Bbosa, who is in the studio to furnish us with answers to some things we're going to ask. Mr. Bbosa, welcome.
Thank you very much, Sam. It's a pleasure and nice always to be on.
To have you here again.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. First question.
Yeah.
We have received reports of increased activity by URA. And your people, the enforcement people, stop vehicles, even boda, even a guy carrying a box, they will stop you and ask you questions.
True.
What's going on? Please update us on this enforcement drive.
Thank you. Sam, it is nice that I thank our taxpayers, those who have been able to pay a fair share of their taxes for us to be able to build our nation.
Yeah.
And when we talk about taxes, usually it goes hand in hand with compliance to taxes. 90% of the taxes we collect are actually paid by taxpayers who pay taxes voluntarily.
Okay. What
we call voluntary compliance. It's only about 10% of taxpayers who usually want to dodge about, if I may use that language. And what you are seeing right now, the enforcement is on compliance.
Okay.
And the compliance we're looking at is compliance for the electronic physical receipting and invoicing, which we call EFRIS.
Okay, EFRIS,
and
yes.
that EFRIS monitors value-added tax.
Okay.
We are also monitoring compliance for digital tracking stamp products, those that have been gazetted for digital tracking stamps, and that usually monitors local excise duty.
Okay.
And this one we are doing in many business centers around the country.
Okay.
So ideally, if you are a value-added tax registered business or company or individual for that matter, you are expected to be using the EFRIS system. It's important to underscore that EFRIS is not a tax. Many people confronting this think it is a new tax. It is a system that allows you to monitor and be able to account for this tax.
Okay.
But we still have some taxpayers who have been eluding or even evading the use of this system.
Okay.
And the trick is, if somebody is not issuing e-receipts, e-invoices, or what we call physicalized invoices, the chances are that they are collecting VAT and not submitting it. So we are enforcing to make sure that if you're a supplier, if you are a manufacturer, if you are a trader, and you are in that bracket of a VAT registered business, person or company, we want you to demonstrate that you have an e-invoice. So when we find you going to supply goods, we would want you to stop and show us that you have an e-invoice.
Okay.
If you are basically going to the major distribution areas, whether you have bought things, you could have bought commodities, we would want to see if they have issued you with an e-receipt or an e-invoice. That way, we know that that person received VAT and they will remit it. Every time somebody does not issue using that system, the chances are that we're going to lose tax is very high. Okay. So we're doing that for VAT products, but also local excise products that have been gazetted for digital tracking stamps. Okay. Products like beers, spirits, cement, sodas, water, juices, usually fall in that category of gazetting. Okay. So that is the enforcement we are doing, just to make sure that we are collecting the right taxes and the taxes that actually you have paid. Because remember, VAT and local excise duty is paid by you. But we have some people, businesses, that decide to keep it. Thank you very much.
Okay. But now me, I have put goods on a pickup. I'm going, I'm going home, I'm going to my store.
True.
Why is it me who's bothered? And people have been stopped, like...
Absolutely. First of all, I think we need to apologize for the inconvenience. And probably this inconvenience is in the short term. It is not for the long term. It's part of a behavior change. Okay. Sooner or later, when people realize that you can no longer dodge around, people will do the right thing. But even the individual like myself and you are part of the compliance system. We want people like you and me to be able to demand for e-receipts. Okay. If you go and purchase something, request for an e-receipt. That way, is the only way you can be sure, we can be sure that the taxes you have paid will be remitted for the cost they have.
Okay.
If you do not, that means you are giving room to the seller to also collect but not remit. So yes, it may seem inconveniencing, but we need both sides of the pyramid, the seller and the buyer, to be part of the compliance equation.
Okay.
So you may seem inconvenienced, but we want to make it a culture. We want to make it a habit, because it happens in many other jurisdictions that if I go and buy something, demand for my e-receipt, demand for my e-invoice, because that way, you see, these e-invoices and e-receipts usually have a verification number, a physical document number, and a QR code. Those are undistinguishable, and those are the guarantees that we have received the taxes that you have paid. So for now, we would want the public to bear with the situation, but just do the right thing, because once you have your e-invoice, you only have to show it and you're good to go at the end of the day. But most of the people that are being stopped or maybe inconvenienced in this case are people who are basically carrying large volumes of goods. If you're carrying a truckload or ABCD, that means you are either purchasing or you're going to sell, so at least we want to know that you are on the system. If you're an everyday person holding a loaf of bread, a pint of milk, it's unlikely that we're going to stop you in that regard. So we would expect that the public understands the reason why this is happening, and just to bear the inconvenience for now, but sooner or later, it is not something we are planning to do in the long term. It is basically part of an education process to get people in the culture of asking and issuing physicalized receipts.
So you have got me, I haven't been given that receipt. What's the worst that can happen?
Interestingly, as part of this project, the compliance project, one, if we find you, first of all, we are registering people we find that are not registered on VAT. And I mean, an assessment will be made, and we say that you are suitable for VAT transaction, you'll be registered. So we do registration. As we're registering, we're also educating you. But we also find people who probably have ignored the system. They either have been on but not issuing, so usually we will make default assessments at that point in time. There may be penalties that may become applicable at that point in time. For people who are a bit violent, you may find that even sometimes we do confiscation of goods. There are people who have had the misfortune where we have locked down premises just to make sure we come on the table and be able to tell you your obligations, your rights, so that you can exercise them. So there's that enforcement can be inconveniencing depending on the situation where we find you. There are some people who probably genuinely do not know, and all we do is basically educate them and register them, onboard them. There are those who are basically needs a different treatment altogether. So some people have gotten penalties, others have gotten default assessments, others have actually been, unfortunately, that their premises or even products have been confiscated.
For me, the buyer, Mr. Bbosa, I am bought. What's the worst that can happen to me? You stop my truck now, you tell your guys, say we need to go back. Okay, we go back. What's the worst that can happen to me? Me, I've just bought.
So usually for something like a truck, we will hold on to the truck until such a time when you can deliver
the receipt,
a physicalized invoice. So if it means calling the person who has made the sale, and they will actually do so, and many actually do so. Sometimes people buy but do not ask for this. So like I said, we're trying to build a culture where people can ask for this. So we will hold on to the goods until you can produce. If you can't, then we onboard you. If you're not registered, we get you registered and have you issue. The beauty that where we are right now with technology, it is easy to register for EFRIS, and you can even use a mobile app as long as you have a smartphone, and you can issue an invoice there and then. So because the tools are there, we only get people to use the tools. But again, it is not in our interest to inconvenience. We only do it as far as somebody is able to comply.
What happens, and I'm really asking like a consumer, okay, the guy is VAT registered, but somehow he gives me a lower price, less VAT, and me, you get me with my goods. What happens in that situation?
Under the circumstances, if a product is VATable, and the seller has decided not to charge VAT,
yes, and therefore charge less
legally,
price, yes,
he will have taken the responsibility for the VAT. Ideally, because VAT is a consumption tax.
Yes.
It is paid by the final consumer. So
yes.
businesses transfer it to the final consumer. If I'm a business and I have bought inputs, supplies for my business, that is my input VAT. If I sell, that is my output VAT. If I'm paying URA, I say output minus input, the difference is what I pay. So at the end of the day, businesses do not pay VAT because they transfer it to the next person in the value chain. But if you decide to do what exactly you have said, then you take the obligation, because for whatever price you have sold, for we assume that the VAT component is embedded in there, and you will have to pay the VAT.
So my goods, for me, can I go with my goods or
absolutely, absolutely? As a customer, many people usually will give discounts. There are some products that are usually on promotion, so usually the seller will have factored in that aspect of VAT. It will have been taken care of for you as a consumer. Sometimes you may never know. There are many people who just have a price, and you may not know that the VAT component was put in there. But ideally, the physicalized receipt will always show you the VAT component, because it's important as a customer for you to know this is what actually the product costs, and this is what I've paid in VAT. So I think it is just a question of transparency.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bbosa, for that elaboration. We don't have a lot of time normally, but at least the message has come out. So viewers, when you go to buy stuff that is supposed to be VAT or excise duty, please ask for your e-receipt, so they don't inconvenience you. The taxman tries to do their job, and the country has to collect taxes, and therefore they have to do their job so that our roads and everything else is made. We hope we added value to you with this information. That was the link. Thank you for joining us tonight.